Okay, reading seminar students, let's jump into chapter 2. Today we're going to hear from two chemical engineers, and they've done a good job. They've actually set up a laptop, and I think they've used their smartphone to record themselves talking so you can kind of see them and you can see their laptop pretty clearly. So I think it's a fine way to present if you don't want to use online screen grab software. And I noticed different file types are also working. In addition to MP4, MOV, and MKV seem to work just fine. We'll see when I upload it to YouTube with the different file types, but I believe it's acceptable. I can view it, I can review it, and I'm enjoying getting to know you one by one by one. So, just to give a little bit of an overview, these guys are going to explain Chapter 2 in more detail, but I thought they used a great style, and I wanted to talk about the main points of Chapter 2. I know most of you have already read it, but it deals with one of those really interesting topics of work, and especially humans and AI and what is going to happen in the future with us and work. And Harari is going to give some predictions, and your classmates are going to give their thoughts and opinions about this, in addition to giving you some information that comes from this chapter. So I really like the way they break the chapter down. I like the way they're facing the camera and giving their information, and I like that they added their own thoughts and their own experience of reading the book, of reading their chapter. I really like that when the student tells me, well, I think Harari was doing this, but then later I changed my mind and I think it's this. So I like to hear your opinions in addition to the general information that's coming. So, great style. I think this is great. The first three speakers have done a great job, and I want to keep this going. Today we're going to do two speakers, right? We're going to have Chapter 2A from Hasung and 2B from Jingyu, both chemical engineers. And I couldn't help wondering, inside the field of chemical engineering, could AI replace some of those jobs someday? So let's see here. Chapter 2, work, we get into basically AI is getting better and better at understanding humans, right? The biochemical mechanisms in our head, our desires, our choices. AI is getting better and better at becoming human in this regard. They might be able to predict our decisions based on thousands and thousands and thousands of patterns that they read, right? And eventually, one of the fears, one of the predictions is that they would replace human professions. Some professions we can easily imagine robots or AI replacing humans. Other professions, not so much. Something that it might take real creativity to almost a human level of creativity, right? We give ourselves that sort of pat on the back where we're the creative ones, right? Can robots create? I mean, they can mix patterns, but someone who composes a symphony or something like that, we wonder, could AI write the notes for all of the violins and write the notes for all of the different instruments and have it come together? That would be something. It's different than, say, a taxi driver, right? So some human jobs we can sort of easily imagine AI doing. Others, not so much. Some are even replaced today. So they get into that, and in one of the conclusions that you'll hear, you might find that in some lines of work, that means some profession, in some lines of work, right? It might make sense, right? A nice soft way of putting this, to replace all humans with computers, even if individually some humans still do a better job than machines. So in some lines of work, he's not saying all lines of work, but in some, it might make sense. It could be better to replace humans with computers, even if individually some humans still do a better job. So we might have this elite, skilled group that's still better than AI, but as a whole, it makes more sense to replace them with computers. And the example they're going to give in a second, I'll show you, is drivers, right? So traffic data, this comes from 2012 from the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, TSA, about crashes, fatal crashes. And fatal means deadly, right? Someone dies or a number of people die. So 31% of fatal crashes involved alcohol abuse. I do not drink, right? People do. 30% speeding, going too fast. AI can be programmed to hit a maximum speed and go no faster, right? There can be a governor, someone that controls them, and they do not break their programming, right? AI, unless you're watching the Terminator or something, they don't disobey their programming. So fatal crashes, 31% drinking and driving, 30% speeding. I wonder how many of these are both. Do you know what I mean? Because when we drink, our inhibitions are lowered, so we're probably more likely to speed. I wonder if it's like a Venn diagram or if it's separate. I'm guessing there's some overlap there. Anyhow, 20% distracted drivers. Distracted meaning maybe texting, maybe you drop a candy wrapper on the ground and you go to pick it up for a second. You are distracted. You're not following the road. You're not eyes on the road, hands on the wheel. Distracted, right? Not focused. This is the data. What do you notice about all of these pieces of data? They're all things that humans would do. So, self-driving or autonomous vehicles have none of these flaws, as you're probably already guessing. So eventually we could see the displacement, right, or replacement, right, displacement going away, being replaced, of 3.5 million professional truck drivers in the United States alone. That's more worldwide, but 3.5 million truck drivers amongst other driving professions. So sit back for a second and imagine a world where all those big trucks you see, dump trucks. I mean, I live in Incheon Port, so there are tons of giant trucks taking, cargo containers, all sorts of goods back and forth from the port. Imagine these people do not get impatient. Imagine they are AI. Now, they don't speed, they obey all laws, they don't get tired, they don't drink, they don't have flaws, human flaws. Flaws are imperfections or little mistakes. So could we see the displacement of all of these drivers? What about taxi drivers? As a cyclist, I come into close contact with bus drivers, taxi drivers, and truck drivers all the time. And I can see the difference between just simply the space they give me on the side of the road that I'm riding on and the speed they go by. And sometimes, I know it sounds a little sort of just my opinion, but I feel like you can feel when someone's angry going by. You can feel emotion, but with AI, there would be no emotion. So anyhow, AI might actually not all be bad. This is one conclusion. It might actually help create new human jobs. This is one of my takeaways from the chapter, but I'll let you listen to your classmates in a second. I just thought this was worth mentioning because we always think of a world where computers and robots are doing everything and humans are just sitting back like, coronavirus quarantine just at home. What do? Well, instead of humans competing with AI, Harari says there would be new jobs opening up, jobs that focus on maybe servicing the robots, servicing the AI, or leveraging AI, basically leveraging to use something to maximize the advantage to use for gain. So making it better and better and better. But I sort of can see a world like this. This is what Harari puts forward. A place where we wouldn't be totally out of work. We would be shifting our focus to assisting the AI. It still doesn't sound like a perfect world to me, but anyhow, let's see what your classmates have to say about this. I'm looking forward to the presentations from Hasung and Jingyu. I hope you enjoy. Take care for now, everybody. And without further ado, Without further ado, I give you Hasong and then Jingyu.
Hello, I'm Lim Ha-sung. From now on, I will give a presentation on the first part of Chapter 2 work of 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. First, the 21st century in this book means the Fourth Industrial Revolution. In this book, Yuval Harari predicts what may happen to us after the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and he tells us what to do in the future. I will talk about Chapter 2 work. The presentation will be in this order. When we grow up, you might have another job. The Mozart in the machine, new jobs, my thought. We don't know the future. We don't know how many people will suffer tomorrow from the coronavirus, and we don't know, much less, what the job market will be like in 2050. But with the advent of the fourth industrial revolution, many experts assume that machine learning and robots will change much of our lives. Whether it will lead to a terrible disaster or greater prosperity is debatable, but people are worried about unemployment. The author says that humans have a physical and cognitive abilities. In the 19th century, when the Industrial Revolution took place, machines were superior to humans in their physical abilities, so people's work disappeared one by one. But at the same time, with new things using cognitive abilities, mankind has grown rapidly. But in the future, it's a little different. Artificial intelligence, AI, is overtaking humans in cognitive abilities such as learning, analysis, communication, and emotional connection. In fact, what humans think and decide is mostly biochemical mechanisms. So the computer may be able to analyze human behavior and predict decision making, replacing drivers, bankers, and lawyers. A long study has shown that human intuition is also a pattern recognition. The judgment that drivers, bankers, and lawyers made in various situations was not intuition, but to recognize and determine repetitive patterns. In other words, AI can outperform humans even in tasks where human intuition is thought to be necessary. Moreover, AI can make more efficient decisions because it excludes desires and emotions. When we talk about someone, our brain uses physical signals to identify the facial expressions, the height of the voice, and the movements of the hand, etc. But if AI had enough sensors like our bodies, it would be able to handle everything much more accurately and reliably than humans. There are two things of AI ability that overtake human: connectivity and updatable. First, let's look at connectivity. If you compare a human to a robot, human can be a little better. But it is connectivity that widens the gap between them. I will take an example of a factory. This factory tries to make products by division of labor. But when problem arise at some stage, the people in charge will get together for a meeting and think about how to resolve them. Once a solution has been decided, it will be communicated to each worker and then the problem will be solved. It's a very time consuming process, but integrated networks are different. If a problem occurs, the problem is shared as soon as it happens. And as soon as solution is decided, the integrated network shares it with all machines right there. How long do you think this will take? Maybe it's time to blink. The second is updatable. Even if the WHO identifies new disease or produces new drugs, it is almost impossible for all human doctors around the world of individual human beings can update their health instantly, even if there are 10 billion in the world. And they may share their own feedback on new disease or new drugs. Because of these two powerful differences, integrated networks may replace humans, even if individual humans are better than individual machines. Also, self-driving cars are currently being developed in many countries. Through the integrated network, traffic jams will be eliminated and the risk of accidents will be greatly reduced, and the new traffic rules will also be updated at once. Next is Mozart in machine. In what ways can humans differentiate themselves from machines? Harari called it creativity. These days, we can download music directly from Melon, but composers, musicians, singers, and DJs who make music should still be human. We rely on their creativity not only to create completely new music, but to choose from among the countless possibilities. But this will not be safe from the threat of automation either. But what happens if external algorithm can better understand and coordinate human emotions than writers and singers? Anyway, emotions are not a mysterious phenomenon. It is only the result of a biochemical process. In the case of music, analysis is perfectly possible in a mathematical pattern. In other words, it is predictable how a mechanical algorithm will work if it explores millions of music within decades. It will play a suitable song in the individual's suitable situation. That is an impossible capability for human DJs. Oops. Next is new jobs. Harari is a little optimistic here, unlike in the beginning. He says that if many of the traditional jobs in all fields disappear, it will be offset by the creation of new human jobs. Traditional doctors who focus on diagnosing known disease and helping with familiar treatments are likely to be replaced by AI doctors. But that's why it will have to pay a lot more money to carry out groundbreaking research and develop new drugs or surgical procedures. Another example is the pilot. Jobs disappeared as drones replaced the human pilots, but many new opportunities arose in maintenance, remote control, data analysis, and cybersecurity. In fact, the USA military employs more people to fly unmanned planes. And Harari added that the job market in 2050 is likely to be a prominent form of human-machine cooperation rather than competition. The problem, however, is that all new jobs that have emerged are likely to require highly professional expertise and will not be able to solve the problem of unemployed, unskilled workers. In 2050, it will be almost impossible for a factory worker to start a new job such as a cancer researcher or drone pilot after losing his job to a robot. As a result, even with more human jobs, the rise of new jobless group may be inevitable. Finally, my thought. Reading my pages, I thought Harari was a little negative, although he might be a man of thorough preparedness. And I think the era of AI will come much later than Harari says. The first reason is the risk of connectivity. The connectivity of AI is a double-edged sword. Even if it makes a reasonable decision and does an efficient job with an integrated network, a single mistake will have a more disastrous consequences than a human individual's mistake. There is also a risk of hacking because it is a network. No one knows what will happen even when a truly brilliant hacker has a bad heart. Second is the supply of equipment. From a student's point of view at the engineering college, all AI equipment consists of numerous components, including countless semiconductors and batteries, etc. If AI is really to be used in all areas, all parts in the machine must be supplied enough, and their prices should be affordable, and there are enough material to make the parts. I think it's very difficult problem and it will take a long time to solve the problem. The third is an external factor. The world continues to develop rapidly, but variables that we don't expect always appear. Coronavirus, which is the hottest issue now, is the example. And the era of perfect automation will come later than expected, as political issues and cross border disputes are factors that could hamper technological development. We are still being helped by machine at this moment, video presentation, but I want to believe that humans have something that machines can't have. I think the imperfect is probably the perfect. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope to meet you in person in May. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Park Jin-gyu, who is responsible for presenting the second chapter, Work, of 21 Lessons for the 21st Century of Yuval Harari. First, let's talk about the beginning of this chapter. At the beginning of this chapter, Harari talked about the loss of human jobs due to AI development. Harari said AI will be more effective in protecting humans if it works well in medical or driving, arguing that in the end, the ultimate goal we need to protect is people and not jobs. Later, he offers a number of possible answers to the problem of job loss. First of all, he talked about preventing unemployment, which he say is not an attractive answer because of the huge positive effect of AI and robot. But if there is government regulation in the past, if there is government regulation in the past of AI taking away human jobs, it doesn't stop them from losing their jobs, but it can help them to some extent. The role of government regulation is largely to slow the pace of change and to assist and support people. Once people lose their job, they need to create new ones to get. The problem is that jobs are disappearing faster than they are created. So, Harari said the government should step in and secure the time needed to create a new job. And even if you've created a new job, you will need a high level of expertise unless it's a government job. So, while humans are running new skills and jobs, the government should step in to assist and support them. However, even if the government does it all, he said the government cannot solve the mental imbalance caused by billions of people changing themselves every day. Which means that humanity will eventually be pushed out of the job market. And some say that human beings are not needed as producer, but as consumer. They will not become economically irrelevant to society in the future. But Harari contradicts this by taking the theoretical economic system of mining and robotics companies as an example and talking about Google algorithm. Here's a theoretical economic system for mining and robotics companies. When mining company use robot to mine and sell iron to robot companies, it manufactures better robot and sell them back to mine company. And mine company sell more iron to robot company. If this is repeated, the two company will act as both producer and consumers. And all they need is robot and computers. Eventually, Harari said we need to learn what to do when we are pushed out of the job market. What should we do if mankind is pushed out of the job market? Harari said he needs a new model of work after society and work after economic and work after politics. And that the first step is to recognition that the economic and political models we has received from the past are not suitable for addressing the new challenge ahead. So, if we don't need both producer and consumer, we need to develop new economic and social model as soon as possible to protect our physical survival and mental well-being. So far, Harari said the positive effect of AI and robot are too big to prevent unemployment. In this book, Harari talks rationally about what we should do after that is inevitable for humans to end up being pushed out of the job market. But I want to find a more romantic solution. No matter how big the positives are that companies can make more money, I think that if so many people lose their job, we need strong government regulation. Before people get pushed out of the job market, I think the government should set a certain line so that AI and robots can cross the line. And companies should do more people than profit. But after all, I think it's important to find a new model, as Harari said, if we get out of the job market. And then in the next part, Harari explains two possible models and explains what's important to make them work. As a new model, Harari says to think the Universal Basic Income System, UBI, and the Universal Basic Service, respectively representing the capitalist paradise and the communist paradise. The Universal Basic Income System is for government to tax some billionaires and companies that dominate algorithm and robot, and to provide salary to all individuals. It serves as a buffer against unemployment and economic chaos for the poor, while protecting the wealthy from public outrage caused by populism. A similar idea in this regard is to expand the scope of human activity that is considered work, and the government pay for it, considering that it is a job to care for children or to care for a neighborhood, like this. He said these paychecks are no different from the universal basic income system if they cover all the basic needs for the family. Instead of giving them money to buy what they want, the basic universal service is to subsidized service such as free education, free medical care, and free transportation. Choosing between these two systems is a continuous topic because both have pros and cons. After that, Harari said that there was a more important problem than thinking about one. But before that, I thought about which one would be better if I really had to choose between the two. The former could keep his free will and taste in buying things and using facilities, but the latter thought it was more stark and bad because he had to use a set service. But I don't think both can satisfy both human desire. Harari has identified the problem in more detail and he said that the real problem is what is universal and what is basic really mean. In other words, how exactly to define universal and basic is much more important in building a new model. Universal basic resource generally mean state level support, and so far UBI planning has been strictly national and local. But the problem is that the main victim of automation doesn't live in the country, the region where the UBI is implemented. Simply put, the main victim of automation is not being able to get help through the UBI. The first people to be hit by the development of automation are the people of some developing country who make a living through the cheap, unskilled labor, like this. So, if the UBI is in place, it has to be implemented in these countries that the government in that country does have even money and resource to implement to UBI. Of course, it would be different if advanced country like USA helped, but borrow the President Trump's word. For city countries, it is very impossible for American citizens to expect to spend their own taxes to help developing country in need. After all, universal basic support may not be universal in any country. It's also important to define the basics, which basically means taking care of human need. There is no agreed definition. Every culture in history has defined additional need based on self-standardization as basic. If in 2050 the United Nations government will tax and provide basic assistance to all humans, then it's important how they define the basics. In other words, the word basic is paradoxically mean that the root continue to change due to humans' need. And in order to integrate them in this important system, you have to be very careful in defining the basics. The important thing is that once you provide it for free, you have to provide it for life. If it doesn't and rather change standards and there's discrimination against what being offered, then there's going to be a conflict between the recipient and the person who isn't, which creates a social problem. And this basic support has to work for human happiness. And human happiness depends more on your expectation than on objective condition. In other words, a certain number of reward does not make you happy, but rather if you get more than you want to be happy. But the expectation is bound to adapt to the condition. This condition also includes other people's condition. If someone else's situation improves, his or her expectation of seeing it rise, because even if his or her situation is dramatically better than other people's, he remains dissatisfied. So there are a lot of consider when defining the basics. In order to building this system of universal support, it's important to define the university and the basic accurately. At first, I thought that anything would be useful as long as could solve human greed in basic support. But after hearing Harari's explanation, I realized that it wasn't easy to create new system like this. Universal and basic. In a way, the meaning seems clear and not difficult to define. But when we look at the variables, I think is there anything else that difficult to define? Finally, Harari says that if we can combine a universal safety net with a strong community and a meaningful pursuit of life, it would be a blessing for us to lose job to algorithm. But it's a much scarier situation for our entire life to be taken away. And apart from mass unemployment, what we need to worry more about is the transfer of human authority to algorithms. AI and robot treating human jobs is a story it's a story that been around for a long time, and it's a story that likely to happen, but I look at it with a more positive perspective. Also, reading this book, I thought that Harari was thinking too negatively and at first, but it was a stupid idea. Harari didn't look at it negatively, but rationally, he analyzed the current situation and what was going to happen and gave us the answer. It remains to be seen whether the future, as Harari said, will unfold, but I think it is very important that many people know these answers at least before the problem arises. With this, I'll end my presentation. Thank you and see you next time.